All right, welcome everyone. This is the Ask the Team session for Visual Studio Code. A few things to expect today from the agenda is what to expect will be the first thing. Then we're going to introduce some folks from the team. We'll have open question and answer, and there'll be a closing at the end. You can sort of ask questions along the way. So let's go on to the next slide here. So you'll see a chat box on your session. Use that to ask any questions. Post anonymously or use your name. And if a question is approved, then we will move it to the section where everyone can see it. We'd like if you could upvote your favorite questions because those will help us guide which questions we can answer. We have a few folks online that we can answer questions sort of verbally on the screen, and others on the team will answer questions through the meeting chat. And again, we'll answer the most popular questions first, and we're expecting to see a lot of questions coming through, so it might take us a minute to get going, but once we do, we should be okay. So we're recording this session internally. Please don't record the session. Don't spam the chat session. There's going to be, I don't know, there's almost 1,000 people online right now, and so there's going to be a lot of questions that come through. So help us out by not spamming that and asking some concise questions. Of course, what we want to do is adhere to the Microsoft Code of Conduct. Here it is, a large block of text for you to read, but basically it says, you know, be cool, don't be rude, you know, all the normal things that you kind of expect. So if we find that people are not respecting the code of conduct, then we're going to dismiss the questions and move on to the next one. So we really appreciate you following those. All right, so let's start by meeting the team. Now, not everyone is going to be on the call, but there are a bunch of folks that are online. So we'll go through. There's Kai Metzel. He is the engineering manager in Redmond for Visual Studio Code. Burke Holland is a cloud advocate on the team. I love that picture of Burke. Matt Bierner is an engineer on the team. Matt Hernandez, the other Matt on the team, is a program manager. He covers things like Azure tools and the extension ecosystem and things like that. Miguel Solorio is our UX designer on the team. So if you love the look of Visual Studio Code, you should thank Miguel. Alessandro is our product manager. He's on the call live as well. Sana, do you want to say hi to everybody? Let me send your picture live. There we go. Say hi, Sana. All right. Cool. And then we also have, let's see, Rob Lawrence is another engineer on the team, and Eric Amodio. If anybody's ever used GitLens, you want to ask questions of Eric, go ahead. Rob, he's got great answers on, say, the settings UI, remote SSH extension. So yeah, so that is the team. And what we want to do now is move into the question and answer session. So here's just kind of a set of things feel free to ask us about. And we will start looking at the questions that come in and then publish them and start answering. All right. So yeah, product roadmap, anything that we're working on that you can find on our page on GitHub. Remote development, so if you're doing remote SSH or containers at WSL or Visual Studio Code Spaces, of course, there's a great talk later on this afternoon that I'll do on remote development. Any integrations with Azure or GitHub, how we do development out in the open. Happy to answer questions on that. Like I said, there's the UI, the UX of the product. Miguel is here to answer questions on. And what do you want to see? So let us know. Okay, so we got a bunch of questions coming in so far. Let's see. Here's the first question. When will we have pin tabs like we do in Visual Studio 2019? So they are being worked on right now. I think they are available in the Insiders build. But yeah, it's definitely something that's being worked on right now. And so hopefully either it'll be out next month or the month after, whenever we land on the right experience for people. Once we move it out of Insiders, we'll move it into stable. All right. So next question, what are the best extensions for any language for VS Code? That's a tough question. Sunny, you have any thoughts on that one?
What are the best extensions for any language in VS Code? I think GitLens is a very popular one, and it's actually made by someone on our team, Eric Amodio. He used to be at CodeStream, so it provides you the full Git history that you need. You can go to any line and see the commit, and go back in the timeline and see how the file has changed over time. So it basically supercharges the already integration with Git that exists in the product. So that's one of the most popular extensions we have as well.
Yeah, there are a ton of great extensions. It's hard to pick what the best ones are. If you go into the marketplace, there are thousands and thousands of extensions, and you can sort them by the most popular, which usually gives you a good idea of which ones to go and install and try out. And if you find something that works for you, give it a good rating, and then that'll help sort of surface it up higher into the marketplace list. All right. Next question here. VS Code team is doing a great job. Out of curiosity, how many people are working on this? How many teams? Let's see. So the core team of Visual Studio Code is about 27 or 28 people. Actually, we just have a couple of interns just started this week, so maybe we're up to 29 now. And the team is split across Zurich, Switzerland, Redmond. We have a couple of remote people as well, but that's just the core part of Visual Studio Code. If you think of what makes the product as a whole, it's really a combination of the core plus all the different sort of key language extensions. And so is the team that works on the Python extension, the C++ extension, C#, and so if you sort of wrap your arms around all those extensions, you can easily get up to a good 150 people across the division that are working on the core of the product. And then you can go even further if you look at sort of the Azure extensions or GitHub extensions, things like that. It's quite a few people that all come together to deliver the product. All right. Next question. Where is the VS team's biggest focus right now? Tools and productivity enhancements or platform support? So that's another good question. Let's see, probably the best place to go and look to see what's going on with Visual Studio Code is in our public roadmap, and that's on the GitHub repository. So if you go to github.com, Microsoft, VS Code, WAC Wiki, WAC Roadmap, you will find our full roadmap there. Usually it looks at about 6 to 12 months. And I'd say that there's sort of a mix of things that we are working on, from productivity features to integrations with, say, GitHub and your Git experiences and things like that. Remote development, a lot of work with the Codespaces team to bring basically Visual Studio Code into the browser. Some of the newer things that we're working on are notebook support in the core of Visual Studio Code. And so, you could have a great notebook experience where each cell is basically an editor that can leverage all the extensions that exist in the marketplace and problems and debugging and all good stuff like that. So it's kind of a whole broad spectrum of things that we're working on. But the roadmap, if you go there, it'll give you a pretty good idea of what that looks like. All right, Sana, do you want to handle the VS Code settings one? Oh,
sorry, muted. All right, cool. In fact, I could probably demo and show it. I can share my screen.
All right.
All right, cool. Cool. So you see, I'm currently on VS Code Insiders, and currently the settings sync experience is available in Insiders. So
let me share out your screen here. We'll send that live. And there you go. I think everybody should be able to see your screen now.
Cool. I'm in VS Code Insiders, which is our daily build, and this is the one where we ship to every day. So if you don't currently have it, please install it. Give us feedback. It helps us dog food. And so the settings sync experience is currently available in Insiders. So I can go over here to this little account icon, and you can see I'm currently signed in with GitHub. I can turn on preferences sync. And this will allow me to choose what it is I actually want to sync. So right now I have everything syncing. I can turn it on and associate it with the account I'm currently signed into. I'm having a couple issues, so I can go into my settings.json. Or into my settings UI and also try turning it on from here. This is still sort of an experiment and we're getting feedback. So if you want to help us try it out and help us see, what is able to sync or what isn't, you can see we'll have some issues, but please let us know and try it out and insiders today.
Awesome, very cool. All right. Let's see, the next question. Oh, looks like Alessandro answered that one, but I'll answer it here online live for everybody. Actually, maybe I can demo that one. Here, just give me 1 second. All right. Uh-oh. Oh, you stopped sharing your screen. That's what happened. Sorry about that. Okay, let me share my screen now. Okay, one of the questions was, what was the GitHub pull request extension that was demoed in an earlier session? And so it is the GitHub pull requests and issues extension that you can go and grab from the marketplace. And when you install that, well, you won't get that little icon because I drag and drop that around. It'll install a new icon, a new view over here on the left-hand side, which will show you, it's basically a pull request icon. But then what you can do is you can take these. This is one of the new features. You can actually take these and then drag them into other explorers now. And so now what I can do is actually have GitHub issues, GitHub pull requests, all living inside my source code control view-let. And once I log in, I have access to my GitHub issues. I can start working on them, or I can start creating and working on pull requests all at the same time. So that's the answer to that question. All right, let's go back. What's next? Okay, so here's a good one. What's the long-term vision of Visual Studio versus Visual Studio Code? Seems like VS Code is replacing VS in many workflows. So this is a good question. Basically, Visual Studio is a family of products, and each product is sort of designed for a different developer audience. Along 5 years ago, actually, the Visual Studio Code birthday was last week or the week before, where we are 5 years old now. But when we started out Visual Studio Code, what we tried to do was produce a new tool that we didn't have as compared to Visual Studio, which is an editor. And so there's kind of a spectrum of tools. There's at one end of the spectrum, we kind of think of editors like VS Code or Sublime or Notepad++. At the other end of the spectrum are IDEs like Eclipse or Visual Studio. And what Microsoft didn't have at that time was something that sort of sat on the editor side of things. We only had the IDE tool. So that's why we built Visual Studio Code, to act and behave and be more of an editor, where it was very keyboard driven, terminal driven, lightweight, whereas there's no project system. It's just you're working on a folder and files. There's no sort of magic that happens around that. And that's kind of the tool and the focus of Visual Studio Code. Whereas Visual Studio, the IDEs, really it's the magic that comes from the IDE, where everything sort of understands and knows everything that's going on in the tool. So when you open it up and you open up a solution, then it understands all sorts of things about that project and solution. Whereas an editor really kind of just looks at the files and folders on your machine, and extensions can make that richer. But they're definitely two different focuses. And now you think about the Visual Studio family, it also includes Visual Studio for Mac, as well as Visual Studio Codespaces, which is today VS Code running in the browser. So we're going to continue on having multiple products in the family of Visual Studio products, and each one sort of being targeted either towards an IDE, where everything is all encompassing, or towards an editor, or browser-based tools, or whatever it is that you need, instead of making sort of you pick one tool and have it be the same thing for everyone. Okay. Let's see. Ooh, Sana. Here we go. Here's a good one for you. Let me send you live. So Sana, how do you handle accessibility within VS Code? Do you have an A11Y team, or is it handled by each individual developer?
Yeah, we definitely, accessibility has become one of the most important priorities we have for our product. We want it to be usable by all developers, and we actually have a really active ally or accessibility community that helps us every release, give us feedback, open issues on GitHub. We have a new Gitter community where specifically for VS Code accessibility. So if you want, I can actually reply to that comment and share the link to that. So if you're particularly passionate about accessibility, or you want to help us test on different kinds of screen readers, please let us know. We'd love your feedback. Every release, we have more and more features where we try to make open for screen readers. And so you can check them out in our release notes. And also, if you go to the GitHub repo and look at the accessibility label, you can see that we're constantly working on it every iteration.
Awesome. Okay, so we've got another question here. It says, how much dog fooding do you do? Do you do much of the work on VS Code within VS Code? And actually, we do all of our development of VS Code in VS Code. So one thing you can see up here, I've got VS Code running, and there's the green icon on the upper left-hand corner. And this is what we call the insiders build of Visual Studio Code. And this is the build that we use to develop VS Code. It ships every single day. Sometimes multiple times during the day, and it's always basically the latest off of master. So it has the latest features and fixes in it, and so this is the one that we use. Let me see, I can show you how to grab that and download it. So let me bring up my browser here, and so you can see it. There we go. All right, so there we are at code.visualstudio.com. And if you want to download the insiders build, if you come over here, we have the download for Windows button. And if you're on a Mac or Linux, it'll see the appropriate operating system. And you click on the drop down, you'll see there's another column here called insiders. And this is where you can grab the insiders build, right? Or if you want to go to the other downloads, there's an insiders build link as well. So you can go and use the same build that we use. Now you might think, well, that's crazy, sort of being on the bleeding edge of VS Code. But since we're using it to develop VS Code, it is almost never sort of on the ground or on the floor. And if it is, then we're fixed it because we're blocked. And because we have teams that are both in Europe and in North America, we generally have 24/7 coverage. So if something happens while everybody in Redmond's sleeping, the folks in Zurich are up and they'll fix it and they'll push a new build if necessary. And it's just like the same every other sort of update you get from VS Code, kind of happens in the background to try to be as least intrusive as possible. Now, if something does go wrong with the insiders build, there's a couple things that you can do to sort of work around that. One of them is you can actually, in settings, and I can bring up my settings file over here, you can say, you can change what the update mode is. You can say it's manual, or it is the default, which detects every day. Oh, yes, okay. Or none, so it never updates. And so what you can do is you can say, all right, well, I can control how often I will get a copy of insiders. Or worst case scenario, you can run the stable or the blue icon build side by side with the insiders, and they're completely separate. And then, so if something goes wrong with insiders, you always have the stable build to go back to. Okay, so that question. Let's see. All right, Sana, got one for you. Put you on the spot. What is your personal favorite underrated extension for VS Code? Let me send you live. And then I'm going to do my personal underrated favorite for VS Code.
All right, let me pull it up. Let's see. How do I share my screen? Cool.
All right. Let me send your screen live. Hang on.
I've got to look through my installed extensions. Let's see. Actually, what I really like is Peacock. If most of you, it's not under, it's pretty popular, but if you haven't heard of it, it actually changes the border of your windows. So often if you're, if you have multiple VS Code windows open and you have a hard time kind of differentiating which one is running which app, or which work you're doing which window, this lets you create new windows with a different color. So for instance, I can change the border of each of these. So I'm going to quickly reinstall it. All right, cool. And search for Peacock again. All right, I guess it's not liking me today, but if you search for the Peacock extension and install it, you can see that once you install it and create a new window, you can change the border of it, and it will be easy to maintain different windows.
Awesome. All right. So let's see. I am going to now share my screen again. We'll send that live and give my two favorite underrated extensions. The first one is one's called Close All. And this is an extension by Ben Pissarro, who is a engineer over in Zurich. And if I install this extension and I go and I open up a couple of files, here's a package.json. Let's say split it off into a separate panel. What this extension does is it adds this close all button. So if I've got, let's see, multiple files over in that well, let's see, a couple of views, and I want to clean that up, I can easily just hit the close all button and boom, they're all gone. Right? So that's my number one favorite extension. So it works across wells. The second one, I'd be remiss if I didn't say it, is one by me, Chris Dias. And this is the open folder context menu. So if we install this one, what you get is, let's say you open up a folder inside VS Code and you want to sort of focus into a particular folder instead of having the whole thing open. But what this does is adds a context menu or two context menu commands over here, open new workbench here or reopen workbench here. So if I say reopen workbench, it's just going to open it up on that views folder and sort of focus the entire environment down. Those are my two underrated ones that I love the most. All right, let's see what's next. All right, here's one, which is fun. What are the security risks, if any, of using Visual Studio Code extensions from unknown third parties? Well, it's a good question because there's, you have to think about it, like you're downloading code in any development tool in Visual Studio, Eclipse, whatever. If you're taking extensions which are coming from the internet, from someplace, you're downloading them to your machine and you're letting them run on your machine. So there's always this sort of remote possibility where something could go wrong. But we have a lot of protections that are in place for this type of scenario. So the first layer of detection or prevention or protection, I guess is the right word, is in the marketplace itself, where the community can go and rate extensions and provide feedback on it. So if you go up there and you see an extension that has a very poor rating, lots of comments, maybe it says doing something wrong, obviously don't install it. And then the next level of sort of protection we have is the report abuse button on extensions in the marketplace. And if you find an extension or somebody in the community finds an extension, then you can click on that report abuse button. It comes to us and we take these very, very seriously. And what we will do is we'll go investigate the problem. And if it is a security issue or some sort of destructive thing, we have the ability to pull that extension from the marketplace immediately. And if it is severe enough, we actually can send out, well, it's not send out, but we can basically post a JSON file that we host, which Visual Studio Code will look at periodically and say, hey, if that extension is found on the machine, delete it from the machine immediately. So we have this ability to sort of say, all right, this is a very bad extension. VS Code, go delete it. It should not be there. So it kind of quarantines it and puts it aside. So those are kind of like the social way that we protect, and then the mechanical way that we can go and make sure that machines are not hurt. But the most sort of secure way that you can protect yourself is to use, or one way that's very secure to protect yourself, I should say, it's not the most. The most would be to just not use any extensions. But you can use Docker containers as basically an isolated development sandbox where extensions and runtimes, everything are all contained or built into that container. So it creates the sandbox that can't reach out to the rest of your machine. So an extension could be isolated and run inside that container and sort of stay in that place. And if it is misbehaving, it'll only misbehave inside that container. So that's kind of the different levels of protection that are afforded for an ecosystem of extensions, which, you know, by and far is productive and adds value to the tool. But occasionally there's the potential that there's a misbehaved extension out there, and we have some protections in place to make sure that we contain it, or you have the tools in place to contain it yourself. Okay, what's the next one? Oh, here's one. Sana, I'll take this one. Then I'm going to softball you the next one. Where can I learn to use VS Code to its max? One of the guys on the team, Matt Bierner, is actually creating a every single day of the calendar year 2020, which is the highlight of 2020 so far, I have to say, a tip of the day for Visual Studio Code. And he's actually produced a tips and tricks video for VS Code, which is some of his favorite sort of tips and tricks that he's been pulling together. And so if you go on Twitter and you follow Matt, or you follow the VS Code Twitter handle, then you will get access to all of those. And he's got a YouTube channel where you can go and see all the different tips and tricks. To me, that's kind of like the best way to get most productive, is to really sort of understand sort of the ins and outs and the keyboard shortcuts to being really productive with the tool. So Matt is the guy. All right. Let's see. All right. Sana, do you want to take a question?
Yeah.
I'll let you, actually, you can pick, and then you can answer it. Instead of me softballing, throwing you ones that like you don't see them coming.
All right, there's one. Thanks, Chris. It's really generous. What are some key shortcuts and quality of life tips to know as a beginner? This is a fun one. Let me share my screen again. Cool. So there's some really important ones if you're just starting out and want to make your quality of life in VS Code a little bit better. And one of the most important ones is the command palette. So Command Shift P or Control Shift P, depending on what you're on. Everything in VS Code, every sort of action you can take is mapped to a command. So anything you want to do, you can just search for it. So new window, you can open a new window, like anything you can do, even with extensions. Extensions are able to contribute commands to this list. So this is a great one if you just want to try something. Another key one is opening and closing and toggling this Explorer. So Command B. I might have my shortcuts mapped a little differently. Another one is to open the terminal. So Command. All right, sorry. I think I have some different keyboard shortcuts for my insider, so I'll do it on my stable. So Control toggle will toggle the terminal. Control B will toggle the Explorer as well. And then there's different keyboard shortcuts for all of these as well. So those are some of the main ones, the terminal, the Explorer, and the command palette.
All right. Let's see. Let's go to the next one. Send live. All right. I'm trying to see if I can't. Here we go. I want to answer this one question, and I'm just trying to pull up the screen so I can kind of give a little bit of background. So one of the questions is, if you're a dev on VS Code, if you're developing VS Code on VS Code, how did it start before VS Code existed? Which is a really good question. So when we started VS Code, it was really all about the core editor, right? So when you're writing code, that editor that you see, it's called the Monaco editor. And in order to develop that editor, what the team wanted to do was dog food developing the editor, right? So the best way to create a code editor is to use the code editor to create it. So what happened was, and since we were trying to do this in the browser, we decided to create what we call a little workbench around it. It's a little Node application that ran locally. It had an Explorer, had an editor, I think it had a terminal, but it all ran locally, and it had source code control. It all ran locally on the machine, and we used that to go and build the Monaco editor from scratch. And so we were able to dog food that way. And if you look before that, which regular text editors to at least bootstrap this whole process. But we got into a situation where we could dog food building the tool as soon as possible. And we in fact shipped that workbench in Azure. So let me go and share my screen because it's still there in small places. And so let me send my screen live. Okay, so what we see here is actually, this is an Azure function. And one of the things that you can do with an Azure function is, let me back up here. You can edit the Azure function live in the Azure portal. So, here it is, sorry. Over here on the left-hand side of my function, there's a link here. It says App Service Editor Preview. And if you click on that, you'll actually bring up this very, very, very old version of VS Code running in the browser. And this is the original Monaco editor right there, and you can always tell it's the Monaco editor when you do a selection. It has nice rounded corners. So that's how we sort of dog fooded Visual Studio Code before it existed. And then at one point we moved to having it be an Electron-based application running locally, and then last year we also moved back into the browser with Visual Studio Codespaces. Okay, you want to take one, Sana?
Yeah, let me take a look at the list. There's so many. Wow. All right, this one's a good one. What do you think is the best argument to convince my colleagues to switch to VS Code as an IDE? So I think if you think about the current sort of state of editors and IDEs, you have editors on one end that are more lightweight, like Sublime Text and Notepad, and then you have sort of heavier IDEs on the other end, like Eclipse or some other ones. And you can kind of think of VS Code as leaning towards more of an editor. So it's, still as lightweight and fast, but you can kind of specialize it to include some of those features from an IDE, like debugging, formatting, like all these extensions that can kind of make it as powerful as you want it to be. So I think the key argument about trying out VS Code is just that it's really flexible and that you can kind of personalize it. So my VS Code looks different from your VS Code, and it behaves differently too. But that's sort of the extensibility and flexibility is like one of the best parts of it.
Good answer. Good answer. I want to follow up on one of the questions that was asked earlier about pin tabs, and I said I'm pretty sure it's in the insiders build of VS Code, and I just brought it up and confirmed that it is. And so I've got insiders, and I can right click on a tab and I can say pin, and then it will stay pinned. So we're still working on the design of it. Again, there's an issue in the VS Code repository. Probably just search for pin tabs, and then you can contribute to the discussion there. Okay, let's see, what's next? You want to take one?
Yeah, let's keep looking. There was a question earlier. I can't find it, but I remember I saw it about VS Code coming to an iPad, if that's going to be possible. So it's not going to be a native mobile app, but if you haven't heard of Visual Studio Codespaces yet, it was mentioned probably in a bunch of keynotes today, but VS Code Codespaces would be able to be ran on an iPad. So that's still currently in beta, but hopefully you will be able to try it out soon.
Okay, let's see. Let's go to the next one. Where did it go? All right, here's one. Let's see. Is it difficult from an infrastructure point of view to manage an open source tool with literally over 1,000 contributors? It takes a lot of, so the engineering team has gotten really good at sort of managing all the different channels of information that come into the tool. I wouldn't say that it's easy. It takes a lot of discipline to do it, but really what we try to do is write tools that help us sort of manage the flow. So we talked about earlier, in the core of VS Code, there's some 27, 28 folks on the team. We've got millions of users. You can look at the number of issues that come in on GitHub. And so the challenge is that what we want to do is we do something that's the phrase we use is zero distance from the customer or the developer. And so we want to stay as close as possible to the developer's ecosystem that's out there. So we have a person, we rotate this through every week. One engineer on the team we call the inbox tracker, and they're responsible for looking at every single issue that comes in through GitHub and either responding to them, closing them, or signing them out to someone. So we're always on top of what is coming into the system. Parallel to that, we have what we call a Twitter tracker, who is responsible for looking at every single tweet that comes in or references VS Code, finding any issues, trying to answer them, or pushing people in the right direction. So here's a doc, or go, report an issue here or there. So we have people that are sort of code on the front line managing that inflow. The other thing we do, you'll notice in the VS Code repository, there are a lot of bots. And so it makes it easy for us when we sort of triage different issues. You can just put in a quick comment and the bot will come through and either dispose of it if we think that it's a duplicate of something. If we need more information, it'll actually make a post in there and say, hey, we need more information to resolve this particular issue. And it'll even look at, say, if there's no, I think it's 30 days or 60 days now, if there's no more information that comes in because we need more info to actually repro the problem or something like that, it'll go and triage and close out the issue for us. So we try to do a combination of people working on it and a collection of tools that help us manage the inflow of it. So yeah, it's challenging, but it is also quite rewarding work to do. But we're getting better at it, especially as the the infrastructure grows and gets smarter. It really helps us manage the flow. And from a pull request perspective, we try to take as many as we can. We try to thank everyone that provides pull requests. Yeah, so it's challenging, but it is definitely fun to do. All right, Sunny, your turn.
Yeah, let me take a look at the list. There was a question earlier about how we prevent code bloat, because there's just so many people working on the editor, and we add more and more features. So the mindset is trying to ship some features as extensions instead of adding them to VS Code core, so that we can prevent bloat there. As well as provide some new APIs so that other authors and extension authors can start using them in their extensions as well. We also, like Chris mentioned, have a team where we are able to rotate roles. So we have, in most iterations, have a det week where we do a lot of that code cleanup as well. And I think in terms of like the mission and what we're trying to add in core versus extensions, we want to keep it lightweight, but also make sure that, as we mentioned, if you want to kind of have a more specialized experience, you're able to choose the extensions that you want to add that extra power, but then disable them or uninstall them if you don't want to use them anymore. So that's definitely one we're trying to do.
Awesome. All right.
I can take one more.
All right.
Yeah, cool. So there is a question about how VS Code and GitHub integration. So we actually recently have done a lot of work here. So there is a GitHub pull request extension that's been existent for like a year or so. We added some new integration to that. So now it's GitHub pull requests and issues. So if you search for it in VS Code today, you can play around with it. So this kind of brings some of the functionality in GitHub where you can do code reviews, merge PRs, create PRs, and also create issues from your code. So for instance, you were able to create a issue out of a to-do comment and then tag someone else in it. So we're trying to make VS Code sort of more aware of your GitHub presence. And this way you have a tighter loop between what you can do on GitHub and what you can do in VS Code.
Awesome. All right, I got a couple here I can handle. Let's see. That's another one about sort of the tool itself. The development of the program and its tentacles seem rapid and explosive. How are you attempting to prevent code bloat and mission cohesion? I don't know what mission cohesion is, but I can tell you about how we sort of think about what gets added to the tool itself. So we have there's a constant sort of focus on ensuring that performance is as fast as possible. So we have constant measures of performance and looking at the code size and all that stuff. So it's something that we take very seriously and we're always looking at. But probably more importantly is that we try to build the tool as a set of extensions, right? And then as the features come online, if you can get them as an extension, and that's where the functionality comes from, then it's something that you as a user can then add in and customize on your own instead of having it be for every single user gets it in the core of the product. So as Sana was talking about earlier, there's a GitHub pull requests and issues extension, and actually I showed it earlier. All that functionality exists as an extension so that you as a user can customize how you want the tool to be. There's other things too, like you can actually go in and see all of the quote built-in extensions for VS Code. These are like the core extensions for like language services. You can turn those off if you want. And so there's lots of different ways to sort of customize and trim it down, but it's a constant focus of the teams to make sure that performance stays great, the size of it stays lean, as much code as we can rip out, we will rip out. Ben on the team a couple weeks ago overhauled the quick pick experience, which is when you hit Command P and you get that drop down, and he was able to go and remove, I think it was a few thousand lines of code. And so whenever that happens, that's great. All the sort of bells and whistles go off around the team so that we all cheer that there's less code in there, because it helps not only from a size perspective from a download, but also from a maintenance perspective. So constantly trying to stay clean and keep clean. And that's one of the things that we do in the sort of the iteration plans of VS Code is we ship every month, but it's not like a fixed 4-week or 5-week or 3-week iteration. It's whatever the calendar lines up to be. And then in between milestones, we have something that we call a det week, where the individual engineers are able to go in and fix and clean up and do whatever it is that they want to sort of keep their area or parts of the product clean, and so they can go through and sort of pull out unnecessary code and keep it lean and mean. All right. Another question: will VS Code always be an Electron app? I don't see anything in our future that says it's not going to be an Electron app. We invest heavily. So the reason I say that is, in 10 years from now, there could be a new thing out there. We can't even imagine what it is, and we decide that that's the thing to do. But we actually invest quite heavily in Electron. We have one engineer on the team whose sole job is to work on Electron and the integration of VS Code into Electron with all the other big sort of partner teams inside Microsoft and outside Microsoft who are dependent on Electron as well. So it's we consider it a key part of the app, and we continue to focus on it, and we'll make it better, make it faster, make it leaner. Yeah, so it's a key part of what we're doing. So we don't have any immediate plans. There's nothing saying like, yeah, on the roadmap we're going to move off Electron. It's an Electron app, and it's been working out really well for us so far. All right, Sana, your turn.
All right, cool. So there's a question on who on the team manages the majority of the Microsoft published extensions. I owe them a beer. Yeah, that's right. We all owe them beers. So like Chris said, there is a core team for VS Code, but then at Microsoft, we also have a bunch of teams for each of the extensions. And so together, we're all sort of making the product a better one. And so, for instance, there is a Python team that manages the Python extension from Microsoft or a Docker extension from Microsoft. And if you actually go to the extension in VS Code and go to the repository, you can create issues and interact with those teams as well. So, for instance, if you have an issue or a feature suggestion for any of the language published Microsoft extensions, you can go to each of their repos. They're all open source, and you can create an issue or give a feature suggestion.
All right, I got one. Let's see, let me send me live. Actually, I'm going to send my screen live. Okay, so where did it go? Can you recommend any tutorials or docs for authoring VS Code extensions? Yes, I can. So let me zoom in here on the browser a little bit. So here's the VS Code website. Up here in the top is one of the links says API. And so this is all of the extension documentation that we have. It is a great place to come in and get started with extensions. There's your first extension. It's super easy to do. You're on a quick command line tool. Boom, you get set up, you're ready to go in under a minute. And so this is the best place to start learning about extensions. From there, what a lot of people do is they go and they look at the marketplace. And for extensions that are open source, including extensions that ship from Microsoft, there's a bunch of extensions you can look at and see how things are done there. There's a repository, it's called the VS Code-extension samples repository, which has a whole bunch of different extensions, samples that you can go in and try out and learn from. And then we even run what we call a extension authors sort of Slack channel that, if you're getting deep into it, then you can go and join that and get much tighter collaboration with the team. Matt Hernandez and Eric Modio are running that. And so, yeah, so there's lots of different ways to get started with writing extensions and lots of examples out there to pull from. And what's cool about it is, like I said before, since we try to write everything that we do in VS Code as an extension, everything you see in the tool, you can generally create an extension that plugs into it in some fashion. So that's pretty fun. All right. Let's see, one more I've got here. Is there any collaboration with the VS IDE team? If so, what are the feelings between the teams? We love the VS IDE team. But no, seriously, there is a ton of collaboration that goes on across all the developer division working on VS Code and Visual Studio and the Visual Studio family of products. Of course, they're two different code bases. They're written in two different languages. And so we want to share and collaborate. So what's the best way for us to do that? And the way that we sort of collaborate the most today is through language services and debuggers. And so with VS Code, if you're working with a language service like C++ or Python, there's something called a language service that runs that knows how to sort of work with Python, right? And it communicates with VS Code through something called the Language Service Protocol, the LSP. And Visual Studio is adopting the LSP protocol as well. So that means that the same language service that can be used for TypeScript or Python or whatever in VS Code can also be used in Visual Studio as well. And the same thing for debuggers. And so we have a debug adapter protocol, which means that the debuggers that are written for various languages and platforms that are extensions in VS Code will also be able to be used in Visual Studio itself. And so we try to collaborate where it makes sense on those boundaries where we can sort of talk through protocols, and then the customization of the experience really happens in the tool as it should. And then we can reuse code on the back ends of those for the language service, the debugger, which is appropriate. You don't want to have to write the Python language service, one for Visual Studio, one for Visual Studio for Mac, one for VS Code. They all can sort of use the same language service to get the same experience across all the different tools. All right, it's 12:38. Sana, we've got about, what, 7 minutes left?
Yeah, I can
You're
take
up.
a couple.
All right.
So there's one about, sorry, I just lost it. It just scrolled. Has anyone ever made an extension that utilized VS Code in a way that you did not think was possible? Yeah, it happens all the time. People are making some really interesting extensions. There's a couple of really cool ones that are help like visualize things in VS Code. So I know it's a good one for education. If you're a CS student, called the debug visualizer, that was pretty cool. That lets you kind of visualize data structures, and then as you add them, you can kind of see, an extra node being added or being removed. So that was a really cool one that took advantage of web views in VS Code. Let's see. Another question. Is it possible to go through GitHub diffs in VS Code? Definitely. So I can try sharing my screen here.
All right, let me know.
All right, can you guys see my screen?
I'm going to send it live. Oh, you got it. Yep.
Cool. So if I have a file open, for instance, and you just make some difference, hello from build, this is, you're able to definitely see diffs. So I can, sorry. The Git lens tool will help you do that as well. But I can see diffs like this. I can also see the changes I've made in a file. You can kind of change the view to be a split view or a sort of inline view of the diff. So that's definitely really possible.
All right, I got a couple I can handle here, Sana. Let me see. Oh, I'm not showing anything. Let's go here to my screen. Get back so I can see the question. Okay, here we go. I'll share my screen while I'm talking. So curious how code spaces will compare with the full downloadable version. So if you can see my screen over here on the left-hand side, I have got a code space open in the browser. And on the right-hand side, I actually have the exact same code space open in VS Code, right? This is the cat said no node version, and it is the same one over here. And so at the end of the day, the functionality between the two is just about identical. And that is because we're running basically the full VS Code either in the browser or on the desktop. Both have full access to the extension ecosystem. So you have full access to the marketplace, debugging, all of that just works. In code spaces, we can do port forwarding and all that goodness. And so the idea is that you get the full development experience you get in Visual Studio Code on the desktop, the same way that you get a full development experience with Visual Studio Code in code spaces. Obviously, the differences are like if you're working on something locally and you're maybe going after a Raspberry Pi or something and you don't have access to it from the code space, then you can't do that from the browser. But if you're working locally and you can access it from VS Code, then you can do that there. But other than that, they should work almost identically. Okay, so there's the next one. Let's see. What is the most challenging problem the VS Code team, has faced within the last 5 years? The last 5 years is our entire lifetime. But I mean, there are a lot of different fun problems that have been out there. I'd say the most interesting one that we tackled over the past couple of years is remote development. And what I mean by remote development is the ability to use VS Code locally on your machine, but connected, say, over SSH to a VM running someplace in the cloud, or to the Windows subsystem for Linux, or into a Docker container, or even in this case, into a Visual Studio Code space. And that sort of core infrastructure that we put in place, which separated out the UI process of Visual Studio Code and the extension host process into a server piece, has enabled us to have this whole breadth of experiences from the desktop to the browser to the backends running in VMs to containers to WSL. And so that core piece of work that the engineering team spent a ton of time on has enabled a whole bunch of scenarios that we wouldn't be able to do today. Most notably with code spaces having this fluidity between having an entire development experience that you can access from either the desktop or the browser, work together from wherever you want at any time. And so that's been sort of the most rewarding and useful piece of, well, everything's useful, but it's been one of the more challenging ones that has paid off. through the past couple of years.
Yeah, if I can add something else to that. I think another interesting and challenging problem our team has had is more on the customer end. Like you've seen in the last 5 years, we've scaled a ton. And as our community grows bigger and bigger, we're super fortunate to get feedback from them, but managing all that feedback is to certainly become a challenge. So for instance, one thing that we do is on our GitHub repo, we have a team member, Jackson, who's been working on GitHub bots, for instance, to help us triage issues and feedback coming in. We get hundreds of issues on GitHub a day. So sort of managing that and helping us categorize them so we know what to tackle has been a challenge too.
All right, it is 12:44 and some amount of seconds, so I think we have to wrap up. Thank you, everybody, for spending time with us. Let us know how we did. Obviously, connect with us. Follow us at Code on Twitter. One of the coolest handles that is out on Twitter. Issues at Microsoft, github.com/Microsoft/VS Code. Download the tool. And yeah, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed Build, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.